Good afternoon and welcome to the B-side. I am David from 7poundbag.com, and yes, you heard it right. This is a B-side, which means this, if you're catching up this video in 2018 or 2020 or whenever, these are videos that are not going to be more or less timed. I'm not going to be going over any current events. I'm going to be going on more or less stuff that you can actually be worthy to you a year from now, so to speak. But this week we are going to be talking about the world's greatest managers, wrestling managers. No baseball, sorry, that's another topic. And and the thought process kind of came to what makes a good manager. This Friday we are going to be doing the final four of the managers tournament over on the 7poundbag.com. And I kind of got to punting around with Steve a bit on what makes a good manager. And basically I have 5 criteria. And I'll go to those in a second. The final four, of course, is Bobby Heenan versus Paul Bearer, who's our only non-1 seed to come through, beating Jimmy Hart. Paul Heyman versus Jim Cornette. Again, as always, there seems to be a bit of a recency bias, and WWF bias, but that's okay, because I think all 4 of these are definitely worthy. You go back to our beginning. For example, Bobby Heenan's bracket. He had to beat Ole Anderson, Hiro Matsuda, Harvey Wolfman, Ted DiBiase, Harley Race, J.J. Dillon, and Daivari. Paul Heyman's bracket, Brother Love, Paul Ellering, Slick, Teddy Long, Diamond Dallas Page, Mr. Fuji, and Shane McMahon. Jimmy Hart, like I said, he was defeated by Paul Bearer. Others in that bracket, Gary Hart, Paul Jones, Titus O'Neil, for some reason. Like I said, I don't watch the current product, sorry. Kevin Sullivan, Arnold Skaaland, and Oliver Humperdinck. And the Jimmy Cornette region, you have Rico, Zeb Coulter, Captain Lou Albano, who's criminally underseated, Grand Wizard, Alpha, Freddie Blassie, and Johnny Valiant. So, throwing all those names at you, sorry about that. Again, our final 4 are all the 1 seeds, other than Paul Bearer beating Jimmy Hart, which again, I don't know if I quite agree with that. I have to remember who I voted for. But anyway, as I said, our criteria, I kind of looked at it as basically 5 main factors, and you can put it on that. Our first basic ability you have to look at is ability to move tickets. I mean, number one, this is a carny thing. This is making somebody want to buy a ticket. If I don't buy a ticket for a manager, then the manager's wasting time, effort, and the promoter's money and doesn't belong there. Give you an example. Bobby Heenan could manage Andre the Giant, Brooklyn Brawler, whoever. People are still going to show up and chant Weasel. It's something that's going to get the fans excited. Somebody like, say, Daivari, who lost first round of the tournament, Jack Victory in ECW, to me, didn't move tickets as a manager. As a wrestler, they can move tickets. I quite enjoyed some of Daivari's work, and I do remember when Jack Victory was in the ring. But neither one of those guys showing up, let's say Roman Reigns, is going to sell a single ticket to anything. You put somebody like, say, Jim Cornette come out of retirement, he shows out with Roman Reigns? Maybe. Had he been born 20 years earlier, he comes out with Mr. Fuji? Yes, he could have actually been something. You do have also, so somebody like, say, those guys are going to get much lower scores if you rate them 1 through 20, versus somebody like Bobby Heenan, who in my opinion is a perfect 20 in this area. Valets are pretty simple. You get the same people that buy tickets to see Lana that are going to, whether or not she's showing up with John Cena, Roman Reigns, Rusev, New Day, whoever. It's kind of like when they put Sunny with Legion of Doom. It didn't make much of a difference because Legion of Doom fans they're going to be happy. People that want to show up in Oogle Sunny, they're fine with that. I don't think who she managed really sold a ticket, but by herself, people did buy tickets to watch Sunny. So she does get points there. So, you kind of have to grade that how you want. Again, I think your top of your scale is, of course, Bobby Heenan. Your bottom scale is, like I said, people like Daivari and Shane McMahon, things like that. I don't think they mattered who they showed up with. Number 2, your second best, or in my opinion, your second most important criteria is ability to get the person over or make them interesting. Like, for example, King Kong Bundy by himself, is he that interested? Yeah, I mean, he was in Crockett for a while. He was, in that whole army there. It was interesting. In the original Legion of Doom, I personally always did kind of like his work. Did he matter post-Heenan whenever he left there? Not really. Paul Orndorff. very good on his own, but when he was with Heenan, he just stepped up that much. Anybody remember Ice Train? Did Teddy Long really do anything to get his career going? Not really. Has Paul Heyman really done anything to get Curtis Axel over? I mean, King Kong Bundy headlined the second biggest card in WWF history up to that point. Paul Orndorff headlined Saturday's main event before millions of people. The other two, have they done anything? Yeah, not really. I mean, true today, I mean, Vince McMahon could have me headline WrestleMania if he wants, but back then a manager had to make you sell tickets. People bought tickets to watch Orndorff wrestle. People bought tickets to see King Kong Bundy to do stuff. Paul Orndorff's in the Hall of Fame for a reason, not only off of his talent, but the fact that he moved tons of tickets. And a lot of that, in my opinion, has to do with Bobby the Brain Heenan. Again, I think he's the perfect 20 then. When Bobby Heenan showed up with Harley Race, I mean, that instantly made Harley Race as a threat. Unless it was a complete utter joke, like say Terry Taylor or Brooklyn Brawler, you put a new heel with Heenan, like Hercules Hernandez for a reason, he instantly became a credible star, no matter who it was. And it's like, for example, Paul Heyman, when he adds a person to his stable, like say Curtis Axel, it doesn't have quite that impact. Whenever he started putting together his Dangerous Alliance in NWA, it had some impact, but not a ton. It's like Arn Anderson didn't really get a bump joining the Dangerous Alliance. He was already a top shelf guy. But early WWF, you put somebody with Bobby Heenan, he's over, period. And I'll come back to that in a second here, because I do have something involved with that as a criteria. Number 3, ability to take a bump. Good managers take bumps. Good heel managers have to get beat up by the good guy. Good managers have to be able to be threatened by the bad guy and actually have it matter. For example, you look at Shelly Martinez when she was in TNA. She looked horrible. And she actually, other than her 2 biggest obvious assets, she kind of took away from LAX. Just the way things were. But, it's not just a Valet thing. It's like you look at Sherry Martel. She was probably a better wrestler than 90% of the men she managed, and probably better than most of the roster, to be quite honest with you. But she made the crowd happy whenever she got beat up, whenever she got slapped by Shawn Michaels. She got herself over. She was able to take bumps. Bobby Heenan was a better wrestler than a lot of people he managed. Jim Cornette famously blew out his knee on the skyscrapers to kind of get the match over. How dangerous it was. You have another skyscraper match, instantly you know that, hey, this thing's dangerous. These wrestlers are really taking risks because, when the manager got up there, he blew out his knee and damn near crippled for the rest of his life. Miss Elizabeth never took a bump in her life, so she doesn't really score that high here, but she did take non-contact bumps. Whenever she was scared, we were scared for her. To me, that does factor into it. Many valets never do anything but slap a guy or two, such as Baby Doll. But whenever they hauled off, they were important. Like for example, the whole Medusa versus Jim Cornette. Medusa versus Paul Heyman. I mean, that was 2 managers that really got themselves over a lot through their bumping ability. 4th criteria, you've got to look at whether or not they can add credibility to a new star. For example, like I spoke earlier, I mean, if Paul Heyman came up for Survivor Series and said he had a new client to take over when Brock Lesnar retires, he's an instant top-level guy. When Jimmy Hart came up with Danny Davis back in the day, even though he was just the evil ref, he was an uppercarter. Certain managers aren't so good at that. Like, for example, Kevin Sullivan, whenever he came up with the Mummy, it didn't do much. Captain Lobeda comes out with a tag team like the British Bulldogs, they're instantly over. They're instantly something. Some managers are known for being really good people to get a push with. Some not so much. For example, Ice Train. A lot of your valets, they kind of get just pushed with a lower level guy just to do something with them. And you don't get points with that. But like I said, certain managers back in the day, you paired somebody new with them and instantly they were over. And they didn't really have, they may not have earned that spot, but putting them with that manager gave them that spot. For example, if you never watched NWA before in your life, Bobby Heenan comes out, gushes all over the Narcissist, depending on which title cards you read, and it instantly gets him over as a top-flight guy. So yeah, I mean, like I said, you never saw the guy before, didn't know the guy, but Bobby Heenan said he was awesome, and was going to rule the roost in the WWF at the time, yeah, he could do it because look at him. And, Bobby Heenan thinks he's great. Bobby Heenan, knows what he's talking about, even though he never has managed a world title to that point. Bottom line, your last thing, and I do put this at the end, I do kind of rate it last just because some managers are better at interviews than others, and that's their primary job, is interview ability. And I didn't have this in my original foursome, so I'm kind of adding it as a bonus ability. It's almost like bonus points. For example, I mean, I could put muscles on, but I can have muscles like Matt Morgan. I can have the wrestling ability of Bobby Eaton. I could even have the presence of ECW era Mike Awesome, where he can just turn the crowd with a look. But if he opens his mouth and he sounds like Mike Tyson, that kind of hurts it. If he sounds just absolutely useless, that really hurts him. But I can have him not say a freaking word and put him with Cornette or Percy Pringle or even Classy Freddie Blassie back in the day, and I can make him a superstar. And that's something that really managers back in the day, not so much nowadays, is really important. It's like, in my opinion, Brock Lesnar's not that good an interview guy. But you put him with Paul Heyman, one of the best interviews in WWF history, and it's amazing. Yokozuna, I probably lasted 8 years in the WWF and never sped a word. And and it's not just talking about it. I mean, Mr. Fuji barely spoke English on TV, and he was still amazing. Paul Ellering was not that great an interviewer, but he was able to get his guys over how he talked. So yeah, those are kind of that's kind of what, in my opinion, what makes a great manager versus what makes a good manager, what makes a so-so manager. Kicking over to our final four, again, you've got Bobby Heenan versus Paul Bearer. Out of these four, in my opinion, Paul Bearer is probably the weaker link of the four, and he's going against the obvious number one seed. So yeah, I'm taking Heenan, obviously. Percy Pringle, I do know him somewhat from his Texas days. Back when he was Percy Pringle 3. In my opinion, he did very good job there. I think he was very good in WWE, even though he was kind of pigeonholed. But I mean, he managed The Undertaker for years. He managed Kane for years. He did Mankind. So, and more or less Vader for a very short stretch. So, I mean, everybody that he managed in the WWF has always got the world title. So you can't exactly say he managed scrubs. But you could exactly put, I mean, it was kind of a one-shot pony. But he did evolve with the character. He did evolve with The Undertaker, so you can't really say anything bad about that. Bobby Heenan, I think, was probably your more or less perfect manager, just because he worked with so much of a variety, and he was such a classic quick wit. He does tend to get extra love because of his commentating duties, which in my opinion, he's probably the best color guy of all time, and his work on the WWF Primetime. It was just, I mean, he's just awesome at all point in time. There's nothing he couldn't do in the wrestling business that wasn't, in my opinion, awesome. I mean, he was just, he just had perfect everything he did. And I really kind of feel sorry for the AWA because had they been able to hang on to him and do something with him, maybe they could have done something. But I don't think Vern was that forward looking. I mean, he really could have done something and possibly had a good run just on the work of Bobby Heenan. But unfortunately, he just kind of stuck him with Ray Stevens and Nick Bockwinkel and just made him a simple manager. Vince threw all his talent at the wall and everything stuck. So yeah, but like I said, no shame in getting to the Final Four for Paul Bearer. I would have taken Jimmy Hart over him, but still, he made it, but I don't think he gets any further than that. The other bracket's a little harder. Jim Cornette is awesome, but Jim Cornette is his best run with the Midnight Express. Obviously, but everybody he managed, he doesn't really make them stars, to be quite honest, but you put him with a top level guy and he is awesome at putting him with him. For example, his Yokozuna run, his Vader run, his Owen run. Basically, you put him with anybody and he can talk, and that's his best asset. He can talk, he can sell, he can pull tickets in. Put him with a brand new guy, I don't know if it really matters that much. Paul Heyman is kind of in the same boat. It's kind of interesting to see these two go at each other. Both of these guys, one in TNA, one in ECW, kind of went backstage for a bit. It does kind of makes me wonder What I would have changed with it had they stayed as pure managers. I have no doubt on this earth that had they switched roles, Jim Cornette could do just as much with Brock Lesnar. I have no doubt that Paul Heyman couldn't have done in TNA what Jim Cornette did. I don't think you could swap them two up. The big difference is, could Paul Heyman had stayed for a decade plus with the Midnight Express and not gotten stale? And I don't think he could. Uh, could Jim Cornette handle 5 or 6 guys like the Dangerous Alliance of basically upper mid card guys and gotten them all over and pulled off the Medusa angle? Absolutely. Uh, Look at the baby doll thing. So I don't think I think Jim Cornette can do more than Heyman could. Not that there's a knock on him. And when you're looking at a 1 to 20 scale, which is kind of more or less how I grade these, it's really hard when you give one guy a 20 and the other guy a 20 to say, well, he's a hair better. But when you look at something else and Heyman may get a 17 and Cornette gets a 20, there's your margin of victory. It's like, coming to number 2 of these, there's not much difference. As far as your finals, you got Heenan versus Cornette, in my opinion. And again, we won't know this until next week, but of course I'm going Heenan just because, again, Heenan did it all. He managed a world champion. He came in and lent credibility instantly to Ric Flair, didn't change. He got tag team guys over. He got mid-card guys over. He got bottom guys over. I mean, shoot, the Brooklyn Brawler has a career, basically resurgence that he's still riding off of until the day he retired because of Heenan. They almost tried to do it again with a 1-2-3 kid without a manager, which worked well just because of the exceptional ability of Sean Waltman. So, I do kind of think you have that ability, but I do think Heenan gets over. It's hard to have a better manager than Bobby Heenan. As far as also rans, like I said, you got the Bobby Heenan bracket. I think Harley Race kind of got a bit of a shaft. I think J.J. Dillon, just for what he did in that era, I think he had an exceptional run. Those two right there kind of definitely stand out as top 10 type guys. Harvey Whippleman's in that bracket, but like I said, I don't think he did that much, and I don't think he really did as far as credibility. John Gonzalez, for example. Hiro Matsuda was basically a poor man's, in my opinion, J.J. Dillon. Paul Heyman bracket, you got Brother Love, who I thought actually was a good manager. We harken back to his Undertaker days. Paul Ellering, yeah, you did have the Army in the South, but nothing really there stunning. There is big run of courses with the Road Warriors. Again, I think the Road Warriors get over no matter what. I think Hawk has the volume no matter what, and I don't think whenever he bounced to another team that wasn't the LOD, I don't think he was nearly as successful. I don't think you could put him with the Skyscrapers, for example, and get over. I just don't think that happens. Slick was a 5 seed. I think that was kind of highly underseeded, but I do think he's a second-tier manager. Mr. Fuji was a 2nd seed, and I got no problems with that. Again, I think the right person came out of both these brackets. You bounce over to Jimmy Hart. Again, Jimmy Hart, in my opinion, should have won this bracket. I think he's better than Percy Pringle. I think he's better than Gary Hart. In my opinion, Gary Hart, he was good with the Monsters, but I don't think he was that exceptional. Arnold Skaaland was a 7 seed. I think that was criminal. Just to be quite honest with you, he should have been at least a 4 seed. I would take Arnold Skaaland over Paul Jones. Last bracket, again, you got Jim Cornette. You've got Freddie Blassie was a 2nd seed. Oh, man. If you're redoing the 1 seeds, I almost kind of wonder if Freddie Blassie couldn't have taken Jimmy Hart's 1 seed. I do think that Cornette, Heenan, Paulie Dangerously, I think that's 1, 2, 3. But I do think your weakest 1 seed is Jimmy Hart, and your strongest 2nd seed is Freddie Blassie. It's kind of like putting Duke and North Carolina in the same regional. You're screwed there. Your 3rd seed was the Grand Wizard, in my opinion, a little overseeded, which I hate to say because I do like the Grand Wizard, the way he did his hands and all that fun stuff. Captain Laura Band was a 5 seed, which is ridiculous. How Zeb Coulter got a 4 seed. I'm always mad at Steve about something, and his 4 seed at Zeb Coulter is ridiculous. How Rico got in the tournament at all, I got no idea. But anyway, like I said, I mean, he's always biased against TNA. I think the Canadian Alliance should have gotten somebody in here, but that's just me. But at least he doesn't have too many valets in here because we've already done a female character. But that is our B-side for this week. Again, tune in Friday. You will see who comes out of this tournament, who wins this tournament. Will be shown next week. Make sure you hit us up on 7poundbag.com. I will be hitting zombie movies for this Halloween. So I've got like 2 weeks left on that. I do want to thank you for viewing. Please share and subscribe because good knows I could use the views. If you've got future topics you'd like me to do after the Fantastic Four, if you'd like to see another wrestling thing, let me know. Again, we are still playing with a tournament with the format type thing. By all means, kick it over to our Hardcore Henry. Take a look at that. Let me know if you like the movie reviews in that thing. Again, the less I have to fiddle with it, the better or the quicker I get these out. So by all means, let me know. Again, any and all feedback's appreciated. Make sure you hit the website for us. And this is the B-side. And as always, Kobe.